Hello, everyone. My name is Manuela Cervello, or you can just call me E, and I wanted to do my project on the American Dream in Russell Banks's Continental Drift. To begin, I'd like to touch on the American Dream, kind of how we see it today, and then move forward to the components of the American Dream. So, to begin, the American Dream is not made up of one singular dream, but rather a multitude of dreams, commonly associated with themes of hard work, family, and financial stability. The American dream is something ever changing, yet ingrained similarly in the minds of both Americans and those who immigrate to the US. The American dream began as something achievable, but has since grown harder and harder to achieve as our society has progressed. This way of thinking has since moved from something more flexible and that it could be applied to those members of any class to something more rigid and harder to fit into. To quote one of my sources, they write, however variegated its applications, which include the freedom to commit as well as freedom from commitment, all notions of freedom rest on a sense of agency, the idea that individuals have control over the course of their lives. Agency, in turn, lies at the very core of the American dream, the bedrock premise upon which all else depends. To paraphrase Henry David Thoreau, the dream assumes that one can advance confidently in the direction of one's dreams to live out an imagined life. Moving to quote Banks in the novel, he references the American dream as something that is the old life is ladder metaphor, and everyone in America seems to believe in it. Some of the widely known aspects of the American dream include upward mobility, such as economic or social advancement, quest for equality, home ownership, and personal fulfillment, such as your own personal hopes and dreams and goals. To quote that same source, they write, sometimes better and richer and fuller is defined in terms of money in the contemporary United States. One could almost believe this is the only definition, but there are others: religious transformation, political reform, educational attainment, sexual expression. The list is endless. These answers have not only been given at any given time, they have also changed over time and competed for the status of common sense. Moving forward to how the American dream operates in the novel, the most obvious representation would be through the character of Bob Dubois. So, Bob is representative of a blue collar worker and makes barely enough money to survive a week in order to provide for his family. He also serves as this kind of male breadwinner model, wherein he is meant to be the source of financial stability for his family. Bob believes and is told by a multitude of characters that by working hard and through opportunity, he can move up in the world and still make a better life for himself as well as his family. In the novel, Banks writes, everyone he knows, his boss, Fred Turner, his friends at the shop, his wife and children, even his brother Eddie, tells him that he has a future, that his life is not over. For there's still a hell of a lot more of everything out there, and it's just waiting for the taking. And a guy like Bob Dubois, steady, smart, skilled, good looking, and with a sharp sense of humor too, all a guy like that has to do is reach up and grab it. So Bob kind of achieves this trifecta of the American dream. So Banks writes, in fact, what he hates about his life is precisely what he usually points to with pride. He has a steady job, he owns his house, he has a happy, healthy family, and so on. In this quote, what Banks is implying is that he puts emphasis on those three aspects of the American dream, that Bob has a steady job, he owns his house, and he has a happy, healthy family, and so on. Using those words and so on kind of implies that anything other than those three aspects of the American dream are kind of secondary. So, moving forward, the main takeaway is that even if you have seemingly accomplished the American dream, you actually have not. This dream focuses on constant improvement as well as financial stability, with which Bob does not have. This novel showcases that the American dream is only accomplished once others believe you have fully accomplished it. Moving forward to our kind of counterpart to Bob, the character of Venice presents the American dream from the point of view of someone seeking refuge in the US. Venice serves as her own kind of breadwinner, wherein she is risking everything in order to find stability not only for herself, but her son and nephew as well. Banks writes, the young Haitian woman, with her infant in her arms and her adolescent nephew standing beside her, watches the sea behind them slowly swallow the Haitian hills. The small, crowded boat plows northward through a choppy, slate blue sea toward America. Venice believes, toward Florida, where everything will be different, where nothing except the part of her that's inside her skull will be the same, and gradually even that will change. This quote comes from the point in the novel wherein Venice, her son, and her nephew are kind of at the start of their journey to America. So Venice is also the only character to achieve her sense of the American dream, wherein she has survived through it all and made it to America. To quote one of my sources in reference to kind of how these two characters work with each other, is that the double take of this American dream is thus simultaneously told from within and from without the United States. It is part of Banks's attempt to decenter the American dream. So, using that quote as a kind of transition, I would like to now move to Banks's critique of the American dream as shown in the novel. So, in the novel, Banks is presenting a narrative that critiques the belief that in order to better yourself, one must leave everything behind and start anew. To quote one of my sources, they write, "The idea of starting over, which is a phrase first used by Elaine, Bob's wife, to describe what she and Bob must do, and is used to characterize the Haitians' hopes for America. We must all go to where we can start our lives over." Banks is also acknowledging and critiquing the idea that you can go from rags to riches. This is terribly false because of the way America has made it much more expensive to be poor and the lack of opportunities for those of lower classes and financial standings. To quote that same source, they write that Banks's critique of the American dream and continental drift is thus not so much a rejection of the centripetal forces within its discourse as it is an indictment of the discourse's pretension to speak about the economic reality of the United States in the last quarter century. So, when that source kind of writes centripetal forces within its discourse, it's relating to those, what I mentioned as the trifecta of kind of the American dream, including that aspect of starting over. Moving forward, I would like to make note that from my point of view in reading the novel, the character of Bob Dubois or Venice could not exist without the other. So, in order for this narrative to exist, both the characters of Bob Dubois and Venice, as well as their own personal narratives, must also exist. Banks's goal to decenter the American dream is highlighted by showing two completely different stories that could not exist without the other. Similarly to Clarissa and Septimus in Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, one character must die in order for the other to live on. In this case, Bob Dubois must die to attempt to redeem himself for his shame and horrendous acts or choices in life in order for Venice to live out her life in America. So I have also linked two videos. The first one is more of a comedic video that highlights how economy and American dream favors those with more financial stability. And then the second is a video that questions the reality of the American dream as well as the limits of American opportunity. So I've linked both of them. I'll link my Prezi so that you can just directly click on those YouTube videos from that link. Lastly, I would like to go over some of my discussion questions that I would like to kind of engage with you all in the following discussion. My first one is, how do you think this idea of the American dream has evolved to fit modern day standards of living, or has it devolved? Also, do you agree that without Bob's death, Venice could not go on living her life in America? What other characters in the novel achieved or didn't achieve Banks's interpretation of the American dream in the late 1970s to the early 1980s? If you were to place these characters into 2020, would they still hold that same status? And lastly, as mentioned in the two videos linked previously, the American dream is very selective with who it allows to achieve it. What socioeconomic factors, for example, income, class, gender, education, occupation, race, etc., do you feel hold you back from achieving your own personal American dream? And then lastly, this is my works cited page. So thank you so much for listening to my project. And I really hope that you are kind of engaged in this discussion because I really look forward to talking to you all about it. Thank you again.